Okay, so this video here is kind of different from some of the other ones I've put up. There's really no gameplay or anything here, and really no games at all. This actually is a result of a conversation that I had with a fellow YouTuber, Uncle Tom71, and we were talking about the various forms of arcade hardware and some of the differences, and you know, more just kind of how uncommon it is to kind of see some pictures of these things and much less video. So I've kind of set a few boards aside, and I thought, you know, a great kind of frame of reference would be to put some common objects in here, like the consoles that the games might have been ported to, or you know, just something for a size reference. And you know, I'm not really going to get to any tech specs in this video. Those are pretty widely available out there. You can go to system16.com and get the tech specs on any of this hardware if you're interested in it. But more just kind of like the size, the physical layout of the hardware, and talk about a few of the unique things, and kind of, as I said, just have some items to kind of give a frame of reference as to the actual size of this hardware, because it actually does get a little crazy when you get into some of these dedicated boards. First and foremost, I think we should start with the Xbox baseboard, which would be the Sega Chihiro, or however you want to pronounce it. I'm not sure exactly what the exact pronunciation is, but this is actually it's an Xbox baseboard. You probably played games such as Outrun 2 or Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast, port of SP, but it is actually one of the kind of rare cases where the arcade hardware is physically smaller than the home-based conversion, and as you can see, it's kind of a simple board. Got the GD-ROM set up, and it is a JVS standard, which is the wiring standard that Sega went to, starting with the Naomi platform. It's got your basic standardized power inputs. And it's got, of course, you know, your audio outs and your various inputs and outputs. Connects all its media comes from GD-ROM software, which is the same GD-ROM that you'll see used in Naomi. Connections are very similar. You have a power cable that this is actually not connected on this one, and then your I/O. And this is actually a Chihiro Type 3 board, which came about for the Link games. Games such as like Crazy Taxi, House of the Dead 3 ran on Type 1 hardware, which didn't require the linking technology, and that was on the Type 1 board. Next in line is kind of an interesting piece of hardware for Sega, and it is the Hikaru board. And this was really kind of Sega's last dedicated hardcore, where they really developed the board for the games. This came before the Chihiro, and it was kind of their last board before they went to using console technology and PC technology. And again, you'll see here it uses the JVS standard, same basic inputs. You can actually run these boards in the same cabinets as you do the Chihiros or any of the later Sega games. And the problem is this board was very, very powerful, and it produced some incredible visuals, but it was also very, very fragile. And you've seen the cage there. Here's the actual board itself. This one here, it doesn't have the ROM board on it, which typically goes in this area. That's actually been sent in for repair. But basically the problem with this board is underneath all these heat sinks here are ball grid arrays. And basically these heat sinks are attached to the chip, and any flexing of this board whatsoever causes that ball grid to lift from the circuit board itself, and it's very, very difficult to repair. Ken Westerfield is one of the only guys in the world who can really effectively repair these boards, and even he doesn't like doing it just because it's such a mess once you start dealing with those little arrays. And it's really kind of a shame, because there are some nice games on this board, but due to the fragility of the hardware, I really don't think that there's much longevity. I mean, these boards are dying by the day. People aren't repairing them or can't afford to repair them. And this is kind of one of the situations I'm not a big emulation guy, but this is kind of one of the situations where I think really emulation is going to be key, simply because the hardware is not very well designed, and as it fails over the years, these games are going to be, more and more scarce. So if you're out there, emulation guys, get to work on this board set so we can still be playing these games 10 years from now. Really, because of the delicate nature of the hardware, they only released like 6 games on the platform, and it was a very, very expensive piece of hardware to produce on top of that. So it's kind of bittersweet. It's Sega's last foray into actually dedicating a board for their games, but it was really not as well pulled off as, say, the Model 3 platform was. And then finally for this video, we're going to move on to kind of a more uncommonly seen piece of hardware, and that is the Naomi multi-board setup. And as you can see here, we have one of the only games that from this platform, F355 Challenge, was released on the Dreamcast, and it was a pretty decent port. But the Naomi multi-board is a very, very, very large board. As you can see, the Dreamcast here, and we move over to the actual multi-board itself. This is the filter board. It's also JVS standard. It does require multiple power inputs simply because you're running multiple boards in there. You have 1, 2, 3 monitor outs for the deluxe cabinets, and then of course you have your USB inputs, your audio outs, and everything else. Up here on top of the cage we have the actual board itself, and it is essentially what it sounds like. It is a bunch of Naomi boards stacked on top of each other. Here you're looking at the top 2 boards side by side. Over here you have the actual ROM board that runs the program itself. Kind of getting a front view, you can see the layout and how they're stacked on top of each other. This board is for Strike Fighter, actually, and Strike Fighter and airline pilots only use three Naomi boards. So you have 1 here, 2 here, and then number 3 down here on the bottom. In between are these 2 communication boards, and those are required. Those are like specialized boards. They're actually Naomi. There are Naomi COM boards for the Naomi single board setups. Those are not the same as these. These are actually dedicated special boards for the multi-board stacks. And like I said, Strike Fighter and airline pilots use 3 of these boards. The 2 driving games, Ferrari F355 and F355-2, would actually have a 4th board over here in this spot right here. And it actually requires, according to Ken Westerfield, a much more advanced filter board setup. There's actually quite a few changes. I was looking to run Ferrari F355 on this stack, and he said that it's essentially very, very difficult to convert one over. But anyway, as you can see, this is an extremely, extremely large board, especially when compared to the smaller, like the Chihiro and the Hikaru, and essentially the home hardware, the Dreamcast. So anyway, this is all this video is really about. Maybe I'll do a few more of these if there's enough interest, but I just kind of wanted to show a little bit of hardware, and especially while I had the multi-board out, because it's not there's not a lot of information, and pictures of this board set out there. So anyway, thanks, and if you appreciate it, go ahead and comment.